The magical revolution of the reincarnated princess and the genius young lady is by far one of my favorite fantasy series since Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation. While yes, vastly doing different things here, let's not connect the two of them, it's just purely based on my love of fantasy itself. The magical revolution is sort of one of those isekais where it doesn't really rely on the element of isekai so much. Instead, focuses purely on building really fantastic characters with chemistry that make you fall in love with them. Its strength is in character writing, development. I liken it to something like Licorice Coil, mostly on the fact that I believe the two main characters feel so much alike the characters of Licorice Coil. Pairing the Genki character with the broken character, both having some sort of conflict within themselves they're gonna have to deal with. And it's through their supporting each other where they shine. And this extends to the entire cast, as I thought every single one of them were fantastic characters, save for one. And to top it all off, it's a Yuri show that's actually real Yuri. I know, it's a shocker, right? But I'm gonna get into that and so much more with my review of the magical revolution of the reincarnated princess and the genius young lady, a 12-episode series that aired in the winter 2023 anime season, so let's jump right into it. The magical revolution opens up with Anisfia, who is a princess of this kingdom. And very quickly we get a sense that Anisfia is sort of a stain of this kingdom. Despite the fact of all the expectations that are placed upon her, how so many people want her to be the next queen, she's given up her rights to the throne, instead seeking out magicology. Through a little brief backstory, we find out that Anisfia, at some point when she was very young, she got a vision of this previous life that she had. And this vision that she got inspired her for the desire to fly. But there's one big problem. One of the reasons why she's sort of a stain of this kingdom. The entire bloodline of royalty is blessed with magic. The spirits favor them. They were the ones that made the first pact with the spirits. So the expectation is that they have magic. But she doesn't. So instead, because she loves magic, she thinks it's beautiful. We get this shot of one time that she's seen this girl named Ophelia who was doing magic, and she was inspired. She loved it so much. So instead, she uses magicology. And the study of magicology that she's doing is essentially taking these cores from monsters and infusing them into medicine that she can use to get magic. And this is seen as taboo, seen as an insult to the spirits themselves. And the deeper issue that comes with it, and it's the thing that Anisfia inspires to do, is she wants to give this to the people, give it to the commoners, because the entire political systems and the powers within this kingdom is ruled by whether you have magic or not. If you don't have magic, you're a commoner. The nobles and the royalty, they have magic. And so that's the power structure. And she wants to kind of shake that up. She wants to give magic to everybody because she loves it so much. Well, because she's not going to become queen, that all lies on the shoulders of Algard, her brother. And it doesn't seem like he's too happy about this, having this responsibility thrusted upon him. And it so happens, the one that inspired Anisfia so much in magic, Ophelia, is set to wed him. Well, publicly in front of a whole bunch of people during a party, Algard comes out and says that Ophelia has been threatening this other girl, Lainey, and he'll never marry her. Instead, he wants to marry Lainey. Anisfia, while she's practicing flying, ends up crashing into the party, swoops Ophelia up off of her feet, and rushes off with her, claiming to her father that, I took her. She's mine. I'm gonna have her. Well, Ophelia becomes Anisfia's partner. In order to restore Ophelia's reputation, she's gonna do magicology and then have Ophelia present it and thus gain the credit for it. And over time, we meet Lainey and we find out about her whole involvement with Algard. And it all kind of goes to a further story about the kingdom itself and again, the power struggles between the nobles and the commoners. And how, again, some people seek to change what's the norm and those that seek to keep it how it is. So my thoughts on the magical revolution. I absolutely love this series. I really, for the longest time, was pretty much planning on making this a 10 out of 10 show for myself. I honestly absolutely adore it. And a lot of that has to do with, like I mentioned earlier, it's the chemistry, it's the characters, it's the writing. I loved every single one of these characters. Even Algard, who I thought was just an absolute trope Otome game character who basically ruins this other girl's life because she's obviously the villainess or something. I thought it was going to go very tropish with him, but in the end, it actually explains Algard. And I really do feel for his relationship with his sister. It breaks my heart. But I love every single one of these characters. Anisfia was my initial draw of the show. Coming in the show, she's very Genki, she's very fun, she's very uplifting, she cares for those around her. Sweeping up Ophelia off her feet and showing her a possible new life was absolutely gold. I adore her personality. And like I mentioned earlier, I really feel like she's similar to Chisato from Licorice Recoil, and that idea of that uplifting and that very Genki nature, although having a conflict deep inside. Unlike Chisato, I feel like Anisfia has a lot more issues that she's trying to cover up, and ultimately a big part of the later part of this series is her coming into realization of that conflict that she's going to eventually have to face. Ophelia was the second core character for me, in that she was a character that had everything set for her life. This is what you're going to do. You're going to become queen, and you're going to stand at the side of Algard. Everything she did her entire life was for that moment. And to have it all thrown away by false accusations, she feels crushed. What purpose do I have? Even going so far as to telling Anisfia, tell me what to do. Give me an order. I need to know what I need to do next. I've been fitting into this mold. That mold's gone. I need a new mold. Give me a mold to stick to. And she's shown by Anisfia, no, this is your chance. Be free. Your next step is your own. Not saying what Ophelia has to do, not commanding her, but at least giving her options. And I absolutely loved it. The development of Ophelia from the point of the beginning to the end was fantastic. And then we have Lainey, who came out of left field, and I just, in a scene change, I immediately went, my gosh, I love Lainey. I immediately love Lainey. It was very creative what they ended up doing with the character. Ilya, the maid, getting into her backstory was fantastic. Tilty, I wish we got more of her, but every scene she was in, she was great. And yes, even the fathers, I love them. I see their struggles and wanting the best for their children, but at the same time knowing responsibilities of kingdoms, not letting them destroy themselves. This show, like I said earlier, excels at characters and their developments and their relationships, and ultimately coming together to fight the system that seems unfightable. Now, yes, I would agree that probably the broader story itself is, I think, where I've seen the most people have conflict with. Me personally, I was fine with it. I think it's a great plotline. It all sort of works to develop Anisfia as a character, because again, she loves magic, but she's sort of like a commoner in the idea that she doesn't have magic. So she could feel what everybody feels like when they're looked down upon by those with magic. But it goes further in the idea that she loves magic. She thinks it's beautiful. She wants to use it so badly, but the spirits gave her no magic capability. Or you could probably speculate that it was probably because she was isekai'd. Which I do want to point out that despite it being isekai, it doesn't rely on the tropes of an isekai. You don't have her constantly saying, well, I had this in the previous life, I can have this. She barely ever thinks about the previous world. Her focus is in the now. This is one of those rare isekais that I absolutely love because it's about the world that they're in. Their focus is the world they're in. They're living in it, and they become the character. Now, it does do some really creative stuff with that mentality in the later segments of the series, but again, for most of the series, it's a focus on her being there. Obviously, the only thing you're really seeing a lot of from her previous life is the magicology that she's doing. She is sort of creating things that you would have in this previous life with magic, like a home security system. But again, it's not the focus, and I like that. It's refreshing. As the series goes along, and you see how Anisfia is trying to build up some way of having magic, and as she gathers people around her, because she's unwilling to look away when somebody's having a problem, eventually it all leads to the bigger conflict of how the nobles themselves don't want Anisfia around. And seeing how all that kind of resolves was satisfying. Although heartbreaking in a lot of senses. But that's not to say the writing is without flaws, unfortunately. There was a few scenes where it felt like the dialogue exchanges were a little bit rough. On one end, it had an issue with the characters' emotions kind of fluctuating back and forth, and so the exchange of conversation didn't feel natural. It felt very wild. One character would be upset, and then they'd be crying, and then they would say something, and the other character would suddenly get upset, and they would start crying, and the other character would be normal. And it would just, the fluctuation was a little weird. But this only happened for a couple of scenes, so it doesn't really ruin the whole show. There was also a few story beats where it felt like the writer was relying too much on me making a speculation on what exactly happened. Now, in one of those cases, it was explained in the next episode, but unfortunately, it still kind of ruins everything that came before it. It didn't make sense, and it frustrated me. But again, these are a couple scenes throughout an entire 12-episode series. It doesn't ruin it, but it does make it kind of not a perfect series. And I sort of feel obligated to warn people. Visually, this series is absolutely beautiful. I adore the character designs. I think they're absolutely fantastic. Anisfia is super adorable. Ophelia, I just feel for her. She's just you'd think that she's gonna be like the Ice Queen, emotionless, but she has so much emotion in her, and they bring that out with expression. I love Tilty, even though she's an archetype I typically don't like. Ilya's design, my gosh, Lainey, chef kiss. At some point, Lainey changed, and I'm like, girl's got it. Girl has got it. She's got that timidness, but you know deep inside she's a little crazy. And what's great is that the studio kept them on model. And that's the main key thing. The studio really did pull it together. And although this series isn't an action-packed series, there's probably 4 or 5 main key action scenes in the entire series, but they were amazing. We had a dragon that wasn't CGI. That's enough for me. Like, a 10 out of 10. The dragon is not CGI. I'll put it on my thumbnail. 10 out of 10, the dragon wasn't CGI. But every action scene, I think what made it look so amazing is, yes, the action itself, the visuals, the character designs, keeping on model, the impact of the blows, but the magic looked amazing. They did like this really cool contrasting colors things, a lot of reds and blues and everything, and how it swirls around. I thought it looked fantastic. The colors just popped, and it made it even more amazing. It makes you understand why Anisfia loves magic so much. It makes you recall the scene when Anisfia and Ophelia were younger, and Anisfia was watching Ophelia use her magic. You understand why Anisfia wants it so much. It's so beautiful. It's so majestic. In the end, I love this series so much. I'm really heartbroken to see it gone. I want to see more of it. I'm really, really close to just going out and reading all the light novels at this point. I think this is a gem of a series that I just cannot wait to see more. I really do kind of struggle with the idea that this would even get a second season, just because I felt like the last episode did a couple of time jumps just to kind of give it a bookend. Now, these weren't time jumps that I felt like it broke the pacing or anything. It just felt like one of those moments where, okay, let's just kind of see where everything kind of settles. And then it kind of gives you a feeling of, yeah, this kind of feels like you just kind of wrapped it up. And it's really unfortunate because I love these characters so much that I want to see more of them. The Magical Revolution is unique in so many ways. It really did feel like the writer's purpose and focus was to create characters that were believable and lovable at the same time. Characters you want to root for. You want them to get over their struggles. And at the same time, it's unique in the idea that it's actually Yuri. Anisfia establishes early on, I don't want the throne because I don't want to get with a guy, I don't want to get pregnant. She's really attracted to Ophelia. This isn't your Yuri bait. And finally, it's an isekai that doesn't rely on isekai tropes. It barely even mentions it. And for those reasons, on top of everything else I just mentioned, it's a beautiful, fantastic show. Now again, like I said earlier, not a perfect show. It's pretty darn close. We're talking 9.8 out of 10 here. And I highly suggest checking it out. But that's my review of the Magical Revolution of the Reincarnated Princess and the Genius Young Lady. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as always. If you did, make sure to hit that like button down below, comment, let me know what you thought of the series if you're going to be checking it out. Additionally, if you're new to this channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list if it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more and you like what I do here, I would greatly appreciate if you consider supporting us on Patreon, tips link, super thanks button down below. I also have a membership button down there. Greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel, and y'all take care.